Okay, and hold on. Well, what the heck. Angelica, you will now represent me because for whatever reason, I'm not coming up on screen, but you are.
You're up on my screen.
Okay, well, I'm the one that does the recording and it looks like you. So not that I mind looking like you, but nonetheless, it will confuse people who are watching. So our reading, for the way this will work, is I'm going to do a reading and then there will be a moment of silence and Jackson will come in with a song or with some music. And then after he finishes that, I'll do a benediction and invocation, whatever it's called. And then we will go into Jackson again and then the service. So today's reading comes from The Gentle Art of Blessing, a simple practice that will transform you and your world, written by Pierre, and I hope I'm pronouncing his last name correctly, Pradervand. We've been reading this in the practitioners group. Life loves us absolutely. Life created us and animates us. We are an expression of this superabundant life. God loves us unconditionally. If a rather severe religious education has convinced us that here and now, in my sin, God cannot love me, this is a major error. God loves us, reality loves us, and the life that animates us loves us.
How could anyone ever tell you you were anything less than beautiful? How could anyone ever tell you you were less than whole? How could anyone fail to notice that your loving is a miracle? How deeply you're connected to my soul.
So here's what I know. I know that there is no force so powerful as the force to create, that the universe exists to create, that it creates on every level, from the giant to the tiniest, that we are part of the universe and that we create. And creation is an act of love. And knowing that creation is an act of love, and knowing that that is what we do, we know that love is the most powerful force in the universe. And it is abundant, and it is everywhere, and it flows through us, and it flows to us, and it flows around us, and it is us at our very core. And knowing that we are created from love, and that we are love, and that this is the month of gratitude, I am so grateful for being able to be here, for experiencing life as it is now, everything exactly as it is, and grateful for it as it is, and wanting nothing else. And with that knowledge, I know that today our speaker will give us the perfect information, the best inspiration, and we will all leave here feeling grateful and loved. And so it is.
How could anyone fail to notice that your loving is a miracle? How deeply you're connected to my soul.
Thank you, Jackson and Scott. That was wonderful. So I want to introduce you to somebody I have known since the early 80s. She had already been a minister when I met her, so she became a minister really young. And I felt a kinship with her right away, and I still do after all of these years. Now, I want to tell you that this woman became the president of Religious Science International, and that she's been the head of the youth department and the retreats and programs that they've had forever, and is always involved in some way. Now, right now, she's retired, but she's also still doing ministry, which is a wonderful thing. Perhaps you just can't really retire. You have to do it all the time. So I'm going to stop this share, and what I want you all to do is to put your screen on speaker view, and let's welcome Dr. Candice Becket. So, yay, Candice.
Yay, Dr. Becket.
Okay.
Let's everybody else go on mute. I'll do that.
Okay, so yes, I am Candice Becket, and because she brought it up, I'm going to tell you the truth. I had decided to retire in December 2018, and I was out for about a year and a half. And my main center, I've been in Ukiah, well, now over 30 years as minister, but I've been in ministry for about 41 years total. And but when I tried to retire, about a year and a half in, I get a call from the Ukiah Center, and I still live in Ukiah, but I was actually going to church in Santa Rosa. They're, and they were really struggling with it was 2020 now, it was July of 2020, and they didn't know what to do. And so I said, well, what if I come back and I do virtual services? So I came back in September of 2020, and it ended up being more than just doing the virtual services. I became what we called their gap minister, and so I am still doing that. But Angelica's right. I don't think ministers ever completely retire. I belong to a group of retired ministers, and we meet monthly, and we talk about everything we're doing, and most of us are still involved with the organization on some level. I serve on several committees, and it's great. But when I saw that the overall topic for November was Breathe in the View, and that spoke to me about, am I actually, considering looking out into the view? And then I read a couple of other things. I'm sure Angelica shared this with you, that CSL provides us with a year's worth of notes for talks. And we can use them or not, or we can, hunt and peck. So this was definitely a hunt and peck, because this is as far as I got into the notes. At the very beginning, they have a monthly context, and the monthly context says, in celebration of reaching our summit, we appreciate our view from a higher plane. In gratitude, we welcome the question, what will our next journey reveal? And I got to tell you, for the last couple of years, that's kind of where I've been. I feel like, I did ministry a long time. I was very successful in it. And then I decided I didn't want to do pulpit ministry anymore. And so but I thought I was at a summit, but I never quite was able to look and ask that question. What will be our next journey? What will that be revealing for me? And it's interesting, because I went back to Ukiah and I realized I wasn't doing a pulpit because I was doing this. And for about a year, I was either in this space, which is our home office, or my husband and I have an apartment down in Redwood City. And some of them were from there, but also just, with a blank wall behind me and delivering the talk. So it wasn't exactly pulpit, but it wasn't what I wanted to do. I was still doing basically the same thing that I had been doing for 40 years, and I really want to do something else. So I want to move on to the context of today's topic, and I forgot what today's topic was. Gratitude beyond gifts was today's topic. This context says, living in the mystical journey, we cultivate a deeper gratitude for that which is seen and unseen, heard and unheard, along the path of becoming. So between those two, the what will the journey reveal, and the mystical path, to start to have a deeper appreciation for that's what we're doing. We're walking these mystical paths. I left the topic behind, and Angelica and I also share a really fabulous teacher friend, Helen Street, who used to say, never be limited by your topic. So I'm not. And so I want to stop this being about me and just give you this talk. The word, like I said, the word journey and the word path being in those two ideas that were presented today. I remembered a bunch of stories, and one of them in particular, and I would say this is, I've told literally thousands of stories in my career. I love a good myth. I love a good story. And so this one is definitely, this is on my top 10. And I need to attribute it. It's I read it, the first time I read it was in a book that was kind of an a biography about Swami Muktananda. And so here's the story according to Candice. So once there was a seeker, and he was searching for the meaning of life and eternal happiness. So, the usual, that's kind of what we're all doing. I want to search my life. I want to be happy. That's what he was doing. So one day, because his urge to know more was so great, he decides to go to the master in his village. And there's always a line. Everybody always wants to have time with the master. And so he's watching those in front of him. And so he knows that he'll be allowed one question. So he's really thinking deeply. He wants to come up with the perfect question. And when it is finally his turn, the speaker turns to the master and he says, "Tell me the truth that will forever enlighten me." So the master thinks for a minute and he replies, "God is all there is. Just as water solidifies to become ice, so God solidifies to become all its creations. The air, the trees, the water, the land, it's all one. Everything is God. You are God." And the seeker thinks for a minute, and then he turns to the master and he says, "That can't be all." And the master says, "That's all I have. If you want something else, you must go elsewhere." So the seeker moves on to the next village where there's another master, and he goes to him and he says, "Tell me the truth that will forever enlighten me." And that master turns to him and says, "God is all there is. Just as water solidifies to become ice, so God solidifies to become all of its creations. The air, the trees, the water, the land, it's all one. Everything is God. You are God." Well, you can imagine the seeker is not totally satisfied with this answer either. So he moves on. And he continues this, just moving from town to town, and he'll hear a rumor, and he'll go here and he'll go there. But he does that for a long, long time. And he's getting a little distracted and not really trying to do anything anymore. But then finally he hears of a master who lives in a monastery high in the mountains that will for sure, and somehow in his heart he knows this is the one. So he decides to go and find him. And sure enough, he arrives at the foot of a mountain, and there is a path that is leading up, and it's steep and it's a little crooked, and so he knows it's not going to be easy to walk this path, but here's his path. And at the very top he can see the monastery. So he starts to walk. Meantime, the master in this particular monastery is up in the highest tower part of the monastery, and he's looking down to the end of the path, and the story says he sees him coming. So I want to break here for just a second, because a lot of us, I think, do recognize that we're on a path. And sometimes the path is really straightforward, no forks in the road, not too many obstacles or bumps, and it's comfortable to walk. Other times, not so much. And I remember I asked a question on my Facebook page recently, if you could have no more obstacles or challenges in your life, would you, and why? And I would say vast majority of the people that chose to answer that question said that they would not give up their challenges and obstacles. It's the things they learn the most from. So sometimes, we would love for our path to be easy, but what we know is that when we have great determination, a path is just a path. And those where we maybe don't know and are just trying to move through day to day, those are going to be the ones that reap us the greatest reward. And this path just leads to this higher place. That's a higher stage of consciousness. And he's just getting there. He won't immediately necessarily receive, but he's on his way. So that's one of the things that I love. But the other thing I love about this little segment is the master sees him coming. And this is really also a wonderful statement, because and what Muktananda also described is when he sees him coming, he doesn't just see the physical manifestation of a person coming to him. He sees him, which means he understands him. He knows exactly who this is. He knows exactly why he's coming. He also knows how to handle it. So that's just my little commercial break for metaphysical reasoning here, and we'll move on. So back to the story. Our seeker gets to the monastery, and he goes into the room where the master has given him audience, and he looks at him and he says, and he says to him, tell me the truth that will forever enlighten me. And this master looks at him, sees him, and says, well, I can do that, but first you have to do something for me. And the man's like, oh, good, I'm finally going to get it. And he says, of course, whatever, what do you need? And he goes, I need for you to work for me. And the seeker goes, work for you? Oh, I'd be honored to work for you. What is it? And he goes, and the master looks at him and says, you must work for me for 12 years. And now he's a little taken aback, but pretty quickly he catches himself and he goes, is 12 years too much to have enlightenment? And, like I said, I've been in ministry for over 40 years. 12 sounds like I could hold my breath that long. So, it's not really that much. And he decides that. And so he agrees, yes, I'll work for you for 12 years. And then the master says, well, we only have one opening right now. And so here's what you would need to be doing. Every morning we get up, we do our morning prayers, we have our breakfast, and then we go to work. And that all happens by about 6 in the morning. And then you will spend all the daylight hours out in the cow pastures, picking up cow dung and stacking it next to the kitchen, because that's what we burn for our fires, for our cooking fires. So the seeker is a little taken aback, but again, he's like, I've been coming a long way. This is the closest I've got. So he agrees. And so then he starts every morning. He gets up, they do prayer, they have breakfast, and he goes out and he picks up cow dung and takes it over and piles it next to the kitchen. This goes on and on and on until one day the seeker realizes he has been praying, eating, and stacking cow dung for 12 years and 3 days. So as he remembers that, he also knows that now he can go and get an answer to his question. So he goes before the master and he says, "Master, please, tell me the truth that will forever enlighten me." And the master says, "God is all there is. Just like water solidifies to become ice, so God solidifies to become all of its creation. The air, the trees, the water, the land, it's all God. Everything is God. You are God." The seeker feels this deep, penetrating truth and just stands for several minutes in absolute awe that he has finally heard the truth. And when he comes back to himself and he looks at the master, he thanks him repeatedly. And then he eventually does start to leave. Just as he gets to the door, he turns and he says to the master, "Could I ask just one more question?" And the master says, "Of course." So the seeker says, "That is exactly what I was told long ago by my very first master, and then I was told it by others." And the master of this monastery looks at him and says, "Of course it is. The divine truth has not changed." And the seeker said, "But why did I have to pick up cow dung for 12 years before I understood?" And the master said, "Because you were stupid." That's the end of the story. And I know, at least even for me, the first time I read it, I was like, well, okay, maybe not stupid, but in science of mind terms, what would we call this? And so what I know is that I have, and I bet you some of you could probably jump on this wagon too. I am not always living in as close of contact with that indwelling presence as I could and as I would like. I'm very easily distracted by all sorts of things. But when we're not in close contact, we're mostly residing between what I like to term ignorant and ignoring. So what I mean by between those two, because to be ignorant means that we're unaware. We don't have we're lacking the knowledge about something. While ignoring is just not paying attention. We may actually have it, but we're not paying attention. Now, often when we're ignorant, we do go and we try to maybe learn the things, get the tools to make our lives more productive, more whole, whatever. And then we learn the tools and then we ignore them. So that's why I think it's somewhere between ignorant and ignoring. So my bottom line here is time to stop being ignorant and or ignoring who we really are. So how do we do that? So I found this, and unfortunately it was just a little part, but years and years ago I got this newsletter, or I can't even remember how it got to me, but it was written by the other Reverend Taggart, which would, Jane's husband at that time, Reverend Tagg. And he wrote this thing called Shopping for Enlightenment, the Whole Universe Catalog. And it was all full of these, kind of a spoof on metaphysical implements. There was all kinds of things that would help enhance your spirituality. But the one that I loved, and I said, yeah, I would buy that, he called the Inner Voice Amplifier. Most of you listening today, here's what I want to share with you, because I know that you already know, or you probably wouldn't have showed up here today. You already know that there is this divine inner voice available anytime, anywhere, but we're not hearing it. And my big wake-up call is, it's actually not that I'm not hearing it, I'm just not listening. And that there's a difference there. And so knowing that I have this inner voice that I want to listen to, at least what came up for me was like, well, so what if it's not my inner voice? Because I get these little pickups sometimes, but what I realized is, if I'm not listening to my inner voice, I can be distracted and fooled by other things that I am listening to, things like the news, and even though I'm almost 71 years old, I still have old parental programming that I listen to occasionally. But there are, social rules, my ego, those things will try to fool me and into thinking that they're my inner voice. So what I want is this device, because the way Tag talked about it, the device amplifies your true voice, your inner voice. And at the same time, it screens out all those other voices that are competing for your attention. It taps into an ever-present, already available to us storehouse of wisdom and love and compassion. So here's the other thing I love. It's like all you have to do is ask it a question, ask the amplifier a question, and you get answers. And they're answers that you can trust because it's your inner voice. It's your highest wisdom part of you that is speaking. So you can trust that. So I just think that would be a great tool. And then I have this other teacher, Marcia Sutton, who at one point she said to me, well, you already have that. So guess what, folks? We all already have this tool. And but there is, and what she gave me, is what I'm going to share with you right now, is an actual practice to differentiate between your inner voice and the voice of the other things, whether it's the ego, the news, or whatever. And so what she said, what she told me originally was, it's a really, really good way to start amplifying your inner voice is to meditate. So I know a lot of people don't really love to meditate. It's because they have this other thing, but that's exactly why you're meditating. And it's to quiet your monkey mind. Because if all you're doing is watching your breath or contemplating a candle or something like that, then every time the monkey mind kicks in, you just gently nudge it to the side and keep breathing. Emma Curtis Hopkins advises her students to set a part of their mind, or to set aside a part of their mind as the silent witness. And I love that idea that somewhere within me there is also this silent witness. And that part of me is able to determine, according to Emma, determine what is real and what is chatter. And if the one who knows is within each of us, that ability to determine those differences already exists. Another great, I think, inspiration around this for me comes from Howard Thurman. And he says how good it is to center down, to sit quietly and see one's self pass by. Again, this is how we just allow that which is the greater truth to enter in. And these are meditation. So for me anyway, the question becomes, how do I know which is my inner voice, the voice of God, and what's the other voice saying, or the other voices. So here's a piece of sage wisdom for you from Jiminy Cricket. Let your conscience be your guide. Unfortunately, way too often we are mistakenly thinking that our ego is our inner voice, and it's not. Now, I admit the ego is a really important part of how we operate through the day, because our ego makes decisions. Our ego decides, but the unfortunate thing is the ego sometimes scolds and belittles. And so, I don't really want to listen to that. But what I get is the second I hear that, I know it's not my inner voice. My inner voice always encourages. Another quote from Dr. Holmes says, "This experience comes in the stillness of the soul, when the outer voice is quiet, when the tempest of human strife is abated. It is a quickening of the inner man to the eternal reality." So again, become quiet. And quieting that ego voice isn't always easy. But what it calls for is going within and being ready and willing to listen to the safe place within us. This is really present moment stuff. We talk about nothing can happen outside of the present moment, and that happens to be the truth. You really can't change the past, and you really can't do anything about the future. But right now, you have all the power. In this present moment, there is truth. There are infinite possibilities. But you know what? I don't necessarily need infinite possibilities. I want one clear action that I know is the truth and moves me forward. So when we're in that present moment, that can come to us very quickly. So I have an example that I want to tell you about present moment stuff. And so what it is have you ever been, just ask yourself, have you ever been in a public place, I don't know, a mall, a baseball stadium during the 7th inning stretch? So I'm getting a little personal there, but have you ever walked into the wrong bathroom? Well, in case you haven't, I will let you know I have, both of those occasions. And there was this moment of insight, a moment of decision, a moment in which I knew exactly what to do. I didn't argue with it. I didn't try to negotiate with it. I just left the place I didn't want to be. The place that made me uncomfortable. I left. And as soon as I left, well, I remember in the mall, I remember looking around and being so grateful that nobody had seen me do that. So that was my ego feeling embarrassed, feeling stupid, etc. But after taking a deep breath, or 10, I was able to recognize that in that moment, there was absolute clarity. There was no, well, I guess this is where I'm supposed to be, God's will. Well, if this is my path and this is where it's brought me, I guess I need to stay. There was no contemplating any of that. Or even, I guess God knows what's best. None of that entered my mind. I knew, in that moment, I knew that what I wanted was that absolute clarity in my life all the time. And I'm still working on that. But I do have this really quick, this is my Marcia Sutton exercise that I hope you'll play with this. And she instructs that the divine self is always present and ready to act. And so when we begin to listen to that, to amplify that inner voice and its instructions, we're going to be more and more able to engage that higher wisdom self. And so I said, well, but where do I start? How do I start? And she says, you simply, anything you're doing, even if you think you know the answer, you just allow yourself one breath and to ask, is this mine? And so I started doing that. But when she first said it and I heard that, is this mine? My first reaction was, that can't be all. And I remembered that story I told you earlier. And I thought, well, maybe now's the time to listen. And what her reply, she did give me a good reply. She said, just try it. What have you got to lose? And so I did. And I started with even the most mundane things, like, should I go to the store right now? Should I watch this television show? Should I be entering this conversation? And the cool thing was the answer was always yes or no. And even when I wasn't thrilled with the answer, I didn't argue. I didn't try to negotiate. I let my higher wisdom self supply those steps, and I moved forward. So there were no shoulds. It was gentle, it was loving, it was kind. And I got to tell you, I was amazed at even just kind of engaging my higher wisdom self to go into a store, what amazing things started to happen to me in the store. So I do encourage you to listen and to respond, and to, bottom line, remember who you are. Remember who we are. Remember who they are. Remember, everything is God. And so let's ground that in a spiritual mind treatment. So I always like to take a deep breath. And then if you're comfortable, just allow your eyes to gently close. And know with me right now this truth. God is all there is. Just as water solidifies to become ice, so God solidifies to become all of its creations. The air, the trees, the water, the land, it's all one. Everything is God. You are God. And as I say this, I know that in all time and all space, there is only one thing, and that thing is God. There is no thing outside of it. There is no thing to contradict it. There is no thing other than it. It includes me. It includes everyone present here. There is nothing outside. It includes it all. All that we are is a reflection of the love, the beauty, the perfect wholeness of God. So in this awareness, we look with God eyes and we see clearly. We listen with God's ears and we hear the inner truth in every statement. What appears to be an end in truth is a new beginning. What appears to say no is in truth a new opportunity. I know that we can look and find infinite ways that will always move us forward on our individual spiritual paths, and that collectively we move the world forward. Today we gladly and lovingly walk the path that is indicated for us, knowing that from here we see the demonstration of God in all things, in all people, in all situations. We deeply know that God is all there is, for God is all there is. And together we give thanks that we can look and hear and remember who we are. My soul leaps with joy at this remembrance. I am filled with overflowing, joyful gratitude. And I now release these realizations into the law of mind. knowing that it will continue to create for all of us. And I let it be so, and so it is.
And so it is. Thank you very much, Candice. That was wonderful. I love your stories. Very good. Very good. Well, right now, I want you to keep your screen on speaker view. I want to tell you that 50 years ago next month, a folk singer and a rock musician met and clicked instantly, and that night they even sang together and harmonized perfectly, and they've been doing it ever since. They are Heartdream, Mirabai and Stephen Bangs. So let's welcome them for our music today.
Infinite wings of peace, love overflowing, dreams unveiled. We are connected to God's heart. To be free, to be free. Gently God plays the strings of our heart. Every voice sings one name. Power of gratitude awakens our soul. In the light of God we to be free. We are dancing, we are dancing, we are dancing in the light of we are dancing, we are free, we are
This next song is called I Am Spirit.
I am spirit.
Thank you very much.